Thank you, Stella, for being with us. We wanted to chat with you really quickly about the big trends you're seeing and all the work that you've done so far with the remote, hybrid, people analytics space, as well as in the diversity analytics space. Thank you so much. Welcome. And I'm
Pleasure.
really excited to
My
hear more.
pleasure. I hope it's
Yeah.
okay if I have the water instead of coffee.
No worries. Yeah, whatever works for you. So let me just ask you, I want to hear about the two books. What the you've now written, or you're about to publish the second,
Right.
but you already did one book that you and Anna did an amazing job with. So I want to hear more.
Absolutely. And I think these two books, it's interesting that they both come on the same year. Although I started writing the second book much earlier than the first one. So somehow
Really?
the book was we had a much more compressed timeline and got published much faster. So the first one for the audience is Humans at Work, and that came
Yeah.
out in March. And then the second book is called Humanizing Human Capital, and that one is co-written with Solange Charles. So the first one is with Anna Tavis. The two books are coming at the world of work from two directions. The Humans at Work, it's more of a philosophical, historical, conceptual frameworks on how we can think from HR perspective, from a workplace perspective of creating a differentiated workplace experience. And I intentionally not using the word employee because I believe the workforce, it's a broader options and it's a lot more inclusive term. And intentionally focusing on the workplace because workplace is no longer a physical space. It's no longer an IT technology stack. It's the integration of the two.
Yeah.
And it requires a different design, different set of technologies and different set of insights and analytics to create that experience. So in the Humans at Work, we dive into how the world of work is changing, how we see that workforce composition shifting in light of demographic changes, in light of different expectations and different relationship that workers now expect to build with organizations, how that definition of workplace is shifting. And how might we use technology? How might we use design thinking? How might we use analytics to inform how we change the workplace? In the second book, the Humanizing Human Capital, we espouse the same human centricity, but we make it compelling for business leaders to use data and quantify the impact of different actions we make to create that better experience and rationalize why it's important to invest in it. So think of it as a way to look at the organization as a whole system and look at the workforce journey, and then using analytics to look at the impact we want to make in a more meaningful way, right? So does the employee experience change as a result of investing in certain programs and certain capabilities? Does the program itself has a certain level of efficiency and meets its expected goal? Because many times we deploy a lot of systems, they sound sexy, they sound great, but they don't deliver. And then the last group is how might we link what happens in the world of the workforce and how that impacts the business outcomes, be that customer satisfaction, NPS scores, revenue, and kind of the bottom line numbers, etc. So we walk through the end-to-end life cycle and give examples of different kinds of analytics and measurements themselves that can be used to quantify the impact of actions you're making and investments you're making in workforce experience.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So what are the kind of big high level trends that you've seen as you've been doing a lot of, research, it sounds like on both sides, the data that is available, which is often novel, right? Like we haven't had this much data available for companies to even use, even if they wanted to. And now expectations are changing. So what are the big trends? Where's the intersection of the both? What are you seeing as you look forward?
I think there is a tension that is brewing. And on one side, it's exciting to be in the world of analytics because we can quantify so many things. We have access to so much data. We can see patterns, we can create nudges, we can create recommendations, we can look at the network, we can answer a lot of questions previously unanswerable. So the world of HR became easier because now we have facts. We can sit at the table and say, this person is important to be retained because they hold the kind of the integration between two vast networks. And if this person leaves, you're going to lose that relationship between two big cohorts in our organization. Compared to previously, it was more of a, well, who knows whom, how long people have been, do they have more presence in the office versus working from home? So very subjective values that made it into the decision making. On the flip side, I think we are really starting to get to a point where HR has also the responsibility to step into this conversation and have the right to say time out. We cannot use this kind of data for these kinds of decisions.
Right.
Let's look at the negative impact on certain minority groups. Let's make sure that just because we can measure, that is the right thing to do. There was a podcast I listened, I think on a dailies, about the quantification of productivity and all of these monitoring solutions. You heard that, right? In pursuit of trying to ensure people are productive, we are minimizing the human aspect that is impossible to quantify. So HR is really at the precipice where they need the language, they need the skills, and they need the business acumen to be able to make those determinations and engage in conversations with eager analytics solutions or business leaders that are narrowly focused only on one number at the bottom of the page, to make sure that humans are not missed in the process and we are not creating downside effects that at this point in time we can't even think of or attempt to define. I think you heard in the podcast, right, where there was a point system where chaplains were given based on the type of engagement with family of those who are about to die, or visits they made to people in the hospitals. Like that's such a wrong way of using analytics. And I think in the world of work, we have so many opportunities to use it for bettering the human conditions as opposed to just myopically focusing on business outcomes.
How do you see, when you're looking at all the research and all the work that you've been doing with so many companies, how do you see that kind of balance playing out in the long run?
I think it'll be, as with any tensions, right, a pull and push. There will be a push for more quantification, and we see that companies are realizing they cannot address the shortages in labor with just, paying more, because people at the end are not gonna necessarily come, even though you're paying potentially more. You'll have to automate certain things. So the ability to automate, of course, will give a lot more ways to shift work that shouldn't be human in the first place to automation. On the flip side, I think we will have humans that are going to feel disenfranchised and disempowered. Like in that example in the podcast, where every 10 minutes there's a system that captures the screen. And if you happen to be looking away or not typing within the last 30 seconds, the whole 10 minutes goes away and you're not getting paid for it. So the quality of how the data is captured and how the decisions are being made will have to be scrutinized increasingly more and more. And I think when we deploy AI solutions, the challenge is this conflict between, well, we cannot disclose how our algorithm works because then we'll disclose intellectual property. That kind of argument probably will hold just for a little bit longer until there will be a bigger demand for disclosures, for transparency, for responsible design of a lot of these algorithms. So the end users can understand not only how the decisions are made, but how might we change it to improve the accuracy of recommendations or kind of the decisions that are being made as a result of it. The other, I think, challenge we'll continue to see is this shift between traditional workforce and non-traditional workforce. I think there is a huge shift towards independence. We saw people who, during the pandemic first, they had to, predominantly parents, they quit
Right.
just because they couldn't cope with,
They could manage. Yeah.
couldn't manage. And it's difficult to bring a lot of them back.
Right.
A huge amount of older workers are retiring or choosing early retirement.
Yeah.
There aren't enough babies being born, so our fertility rate is declining. So technically, unless we figure out a different way of resolving the immigration issue or automating, there aren't going to be enough workers to begin with. And
Right.
we will have to rethink where we find talent and how we engage with them, right? It's no longer, well, you will be a full-time employee and therefore we control the time and how you work. It's how can we engage with you regardless of how long you want to come to work for us, be that for a
Right.
day, for a project, or for lifetime. And
Right.
how might we make this relationship fair?
Right.
Not everybody wants to be, 150% engaged. Not everybody comes to work for anything beyond the paycheck. So
Mhm.
how, from analytics perspective, can we look at the demands and needs and values and expectations and then personalize that experience? Because
Yeah.
we've been so
Yeah.
conditioned to have a one size fits all set of
Right.
offerings. And
Right.
no longer that will be accepted. I think the workers, as consumers, already have learned that a lot of things can be personalized, a lot of things can be tailored. Why can't we expect the same thing from the work environment?
That's an interesting take. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. On one hand, we have that push or this pressure to commoditize knowledge workers, the way that we've seen kind of more blue collar work be commoditized over, the past through the industrial age, really.
Yeah.
So there is that need for, hey, can we commoditize that and use technology like you've mentioned? But then at the same time, we also have knowledge workers and in general skilled labor being so minimal and in so much demand that, where is that balance?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I love the personalization. Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the big trends that we are constantly seeing is this move to, it's not just about being fully remote or hybrid, it's about being flexible to your needs.
Bingo. There's another trend that I think we're somewhat of a, not too early, but still early compared to other workplace trends like hybrid. I see a lot more effort and energy around building ecosystems. I think organizations are realizing they no longer can solve a lot of these workforce issues alone, right? When it comes to solving access to talent pools, you really need to engage with the local workforce development, with educational institutions, with different development partners, with local infrastructure to make sure people have bandwidth and the broadband access, transportation, childcare. So thinking a little bit more holistically and trying to organize the players in a way that supports this end-to-end value creation. I'll give a couple of examples just to make it real. So a few years ago, Lowe's, the big warehouse organization, has realized that there are fewer and fewer people who are coming into the trades business. It's not sexy. It's not, advertised as everybody goes into IT and software development and all the other things. But trades people are really critical. They're in high demand. There's all this need for those kind of skills. And what was interesting is their current workforce predominantly used to be contractors, former contractors that would have all the skills and knowledge, and then they would retire, they would come to work for Lowe's, be able to advise the customers, etc. Newer workforce didn't have that skills because the contractors would stay and keep the business open just because there's such a huge demand. So what Lowe's brilliantly did, they created a whole chain of developing internal employees. They partnered with the trades guild to have hands-on training for employees over a period of 9 or 12 months, and then another 9 to 12 months of apprenticeship. And they formed a relationship with a variety of employers who provided apprenticeship opportunities. And additionally, then at the end of the program, the employees were expected to leave to become contractors. And
Wow.
as a result, come and provide services and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
become part of this bigger ecosystem. Another
Right.
example of this type of, it's more geographic driven. So Buffalo, the city of Buffalo, they are creating this local tier 2 talent ecosystem where people can live, earn, learn, have entertainment. So
Oh,
the real estate development is involved. The local employers are pulling money together to create boot camps for people who want to upskill themselves in digital skills. They are attracting investors and venture funds. They are attracting a whole collection of startups focused on fintech and biotech. They are investing in entertainment and stadiums. And
wow.
uh, uh,
I didn't know that.
it's a fascinating way of solving talent issues, because you do need to think about a lot of those adjacent issues. You need to think
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
commute time in order to make it compelling and
yeah,
attractive.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I feel like that's an interesting model that it's evolving. And obviously no one owns everything, but you have to have champions across
Mm.
the entire network to be able to bring everybody together to have that conversation and drive the change, the
Yeah,
systemic.
and you need companies involved. So to develop that so that they
Exactly.
can, so to your point about workplace being not just about a physical location anymore, it's how
Exactly.
your cities that you are operating in now
Exactly.
work.
Exactly.
That's an interesting trend. I mean, where I think there was always this push from companies. Well, there's been this push that companies' number one focus should be about shareholder value, right? But now, because of this, I'm wondering if that will shift to be like, no, we have to build communities so that
Yeah.
we can attract the right type of workers.
And think about Worklytics, right? You are providing a model that we didn't necessarily have a language or a definition for HR,
Right,
right? It's a
right.
network driven insights. You
Yeah,
at the network level provide recommendations. You observe
right.
patterns of how people communicate with each other, how managers engage, and you create those type of recommendations for the network. Imagine
Right.
that at the broader
At
scale
the
to
broader
optimize
scale.
the relationships. I think
Yeah.
that's where the potentially
That's the
opportunities for barriers and reducing them.
right,
Um,
right. No, that's fascinating. I know we have a little bit of time, but I just wanted to also hear about some of the work you've been doing around on the diversity side.
yeah,
That's a passion area for me. So I want to hear
absolutely.
more about where do you see companies kind of changing, and how has the pandemic, how has the response differed from what you saw, because you've been doing this
Yeah,
for so long. I'd love to hear how has it evolved and where do you
yeah.
see that going?
It was a fascinating time to be in the middle of the social and racial justice movement that happened during the
Yeah,
pandemic.
yeah,
It was incredible to finally see that companies are making commitments and
right,
companies are taking a stand. I think the
right,
challenge we all need to really pay attention to is not to get fatigued by D&I actions.
right.
And on one side, I think a lot of actions were kind of done in a spur of the moment or declared in a spur of the moment, but there was not as significant of a commitment to
Right.
really meaningfully adopt
Yeah.
sustaining practices. One of my current clients is called 110. So that's another example of an ecosystem. It's a coalition of Fortune 500 organizations that have committed to create 1 million jobs for Black talent over the next 10 years.
That's
So
amazing.
to me, this is a perfect example of how you could sustain a change, a systemic change.
Right.
Companies, first of all, they make the both financial and organizational commitment that they will create these jobs. This requires rethinking of credential requirements, of the experience and skills requirements.
Yeah.
That requires internal practices change, that requires technology and analytics change to
Love it.
see how
Yeah.
you're making progress. You also need to engage with development, talent developers, right? Bootcamp providers, upskilling and apprenticeships, wraparound services to support the talent so they can build trust and saying, okay, this time I'm going to apply and somebody's going to give me a chance. It's not going to be automatically disqualified by the ATS just because I don't have a 4-year degree.
Right.
So these kinds of organizations are meaningfully making the commitment and taking actions. The challenge, I think, is these type of changes take time. Just think
Yeah.
about all of these organizations. It takes a long time to make systems
Yeah.
changes, to make process
Yeah.
changes,
Yeah,
change the
yeah.
culture, to not require a 4-year degree. So all of those expectations for a fast change may not necessarily come soon enough for all of us and for talent that is expecting. But I see positive energy and movement around that. And I think the more you raise awareness, the more you show what success could look like, the more
Yeah.
likely others are going to follow. And of course, this is just one specific segment. This is just for Black talent, but it's a start, right? If
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can make it work for one segment, we can make it for others as well.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Well, that was really insightful. We're at time, so I don't want to take up too much more. Thank you so much,
My
Stella.
pleasure.